All right. Welcome to DPC Learnings live stream, The Art of Enrollment. My name is Alex George. I'm the head of marketing here at Hint Health. And today I am happy to have Lauren and Claire from Medicava joining us, talking through the art of enrollment. If this is your first time joining one of our live streams, we encourage you to engage the entire time if you can. If you have to drop early, we record all of these and they're all available on your favorite social channels as well as within the Hint community and YouTube. You can engage through the chat over on the right-hand side. And then what we'll do is we'll just jump right into things and get going. So on today's call, and what we're going to be learning and talking about a little bit around the art of enrollment is, what do we mean by that? What is the art of enrollment? We're going to talk a little bit about the importance of a patient experience, how you can go about attracting your ideal patients, what it takes to build credibility in your market, talk a little bit more about the sales process, and then also how to create patient-friendly enrollment flows. And at the end, we'll have a little more talk about how Hint plugs into all these things. So really excited to get started. And Claire and Lauren, feel free to take it away.
Awesome. So excited to be on the other side and talk a little bit about what we do from a Medicava perspective today. And so when we got asked to talk about the art of enrollment, sales is kind of our jam, right? And so, for me, the art of enrollment is everything from marketing to sales and what happens as this prospect is getting really introduced to your practice. And it actually leads into, right, the onboarding of what it looks like to be a patient of the practice. And so, one of the things Claire and I know, as well as the data on Hint has shown us, is 80% of your growth is going to come from word of mouth, right? And so what do you do when people show up knocking at your door? And that's kind of really where we start to begin the patient experience in this whole thing through this entire, what we call the art of enrollment. Because at the end of the day, it's actually an art that you get to master, right? And it could be creative and fun at the same time. And so, Claire, maybe you can speak a little bit to the importance of why we map the patient experience in that piece too.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about this, anytime that you've experienced something in your life, right, whether that's good or bad, you remember it. Most of the time we go online and tell people when we've had a bad experience, but we also remember the times that we had a great one. And especially when we're thinking about a decision that we haven't done before, we have never gone to this place before. We've never experienced it before. We're going through a journey, right? And the first part of that journey is the contemplation. So I always let my practitioners know, when your patients are in that contemplation mode, they're looking online. They're looking at you or for you. And one of the first places to start is directory listings, like like Healthgrades, WebMD, Doximity. You may or may not know this, but your NPI number is public, right? And it's attached to probably the first place you worked. So if you don't go on there and get some reputation management, they might be calling a practice from 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So you always want to make sure your information is up to date. And then, as they're moving into that decision-making type of a stage, this is where your website really comes into play. Your content is key. The type of patients that you want to work with is key. Is it easily navigable? We talk a lot sometimes about ads and SEO and all that. And it's that's great. And do you just have a phone number on your website? Do you have a way for somebody to and who's answering the phone on the other end? There's so many of these little things that come into place, but we have a full journey all the way from contemplation all the way up to assimilation. And you, at each and every point, they're asking themselves the questions that we should be able to answer. So, yeah.
Awesome. I think that a couple stats that I heard recently, one is 62% of all phone calls that come into small businesses are not answered. Ouch, 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 ouch. If you're putting all this time, energy, and effort into marketing and spending money on ads and somebody is not there to answer your phone, you're losing. You've got a bucket with a hole in it. And that's kind of what Claire was alluding to too. You're sending people to your website and you don't have a phone number. You're sending your people to a website and you don't have a lead capture because they don't know you from the guy down the street. And now you got to get them to know, and trust you at the end of the day, or believe in what you're doing. Right. And so, it's really an interesting place, because so many times, when I've interviewed Hint clients and even our own clients, it's I need more marketing. I need more leads. I need more people to come through. The problem is you actually have it happening for you. It's just not, you don't have the catch net on the other side. I see Alex shaking his head as a marketer. I'm sure he has some experience in that too.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest thing on that front is website, right? You've got about 5 seconds max to make that impression and get them to be like, okay, I want to stay here, or no, I don't know what this person's talking about and I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And also meeting them where they are. I think, Claire, you kind of mentioned that, is like, in this digital age, some people want to fill out a form. Some people want to send you a text message. Some people want to pick up the phone call. So like, you got to have all these different ways for them to communicate with you, even if it may not be your favorite way to go about it. You got to meet the customers where they are.
They are. And Lauren actually mentioned that statistic of people who don't have someone answering the phone. It's even more than that. It's like, of the people who even answered the telephone, only 16% of them got the phone number or the name of the person that was calling. And we're not in that business anymore of call up your insurance company and find your provider and walk in the door and throw your insurance card down and pay a copay. Like, that's not the business we're in anymore. And so if we're not collecting that information, that person's going to hang up the phone and call the very next place. And so I know we'll talk about more in the sales process of things, but it's just those very small tweaks. Even when we work with clients and we're like, oh, do you have a CRM, right? A customer relationship management tool? And they're like, no. I'm like, do you even have a spreadsheet? Like, if you at least have a spreadsheet where you're keeping these names and emails, you're 10 times better than the person next door who's not even capturing the information. So yeah, those are some stats just to really think about, and what you're doing at your practice might be, elevated a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Claire mentioned, like, we secret shopped a bunch of y'all who are probably watching, or maybe you're not. Last year at Hint Summit, if you attended, we did a report card on you to figure out, like, how well is your team doing when it comes to sales, right? And so by not understanding where your leads are coming from, or even capturing their information so that you can follow up with them, again, you're filling a bucket with a hole in it. And so how do we help support you in being able to, like, take annotations on these things the same way that you do with your patients in the room, so that you can gather data and start to make business decisions based upon data, the same way you do with your patients in their labs, right? You look at the numbers in order to make an informed decision. And so if you're somebody who's spending a ton of money on ads, or just dipping your toe in it, and you're getting people that are calling you that aren't qualified or don't meet your ideal demographic, unless you're capturing this information, you don't really know, which is why we say, like, the art of enrollment starts way before the patient, like, walks through the door. It's happening, like, when you're brainstorming about what is your marketing strategy to get out there and share who you are and what you're up to in the world.
Yeah. And that just lays perfectly into the overall experience. I mean, we talk about an experience being inherent, but a remarkable experience is something that's choreographed, right? It takes some time and it takes some planning and thinking about. You don't just walk into the room and try to execute a lab interpretation on an organic acids test. Like, that's the same thing that we're doing here. We're not saying that you guys innately understand how to do this, but there is a method. There is an experiential side of this that has to be thought through, and there's a methodology to it, because that's where, when I hear people say, oh, I don't have the budget for marketing, I'm just going to drop it, right? Like, I'm just going to get rid of marketing because it's like the first thing that goes on the list. Well, they don't understand that marketing is education, right? And that's a crucial piece of the sales process. So if you get rid of the education and the contemplation piece, how are we doing that heavy lifting to get them into the practice? Then once they're in there, I then hear, well, nobody's converting. Okay, well, who's answering your phone? Are you answering your phone? Because if you are, I guarantee you need to come to a sales training, right? And if it's not you and it's somebody else, are they an MA, or are they doing 25 other things as well as trying to navigate a phone conversation with a potential lead? And so, yeah, I mean, the experience, like I said, it's inherent, but the remarkable experience is something that really takes time and effort to think through.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think there's an aspect of it as well that I'll just throw in, is like, it's not all about the patient experience on the front end either. It's your customer end-to-end journey. So thinking about how you're continuing to engage with them after they visit, or 6 months after they've signed up for your clinic, or whatever it may be, that end to end. And when are you asking for a referral? Word of mouth. When does that come into play, right? Like, when are you looking to grow your practice up?
Yeah. And even more than that, it's like, do they even understand how to use your practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we talk a lot about assimilation. Like, if we're talking about that whole journey, once they get past contemplation, it's activation. Like, Do they know how to use you? Are you using a handbook? Do they know how to download their information, right? Like, are they even filling out intake forms correctly? Like, are you leveraging Hint's welcome email that comes out to direct them to a landing page to get them to understand what happens after enrollment? There's the one also statistic that I lean into is most people have too many tech systems, but that's because they're only using like 6% of the system that they have. So they end up with all this redundancy because they're taking on too many models or too many pieces of equipment when they could just be using one really well. And that's something that I found interesting, that people haven't really even dug into a lot of their Hint software and seen all the capabilities that are available to them to help execute. So
yeah, for the last 5 years, I've been on the backside of Hint, seeing things that I didn't even know existed when I was on the front side, just as an end user. And I was like, man, all of a sudden there's so much more genius under the hood, right? Like, you don't know all the pieces that are there until you start asking the questions, which I think, to Claire's point, is hugely beneficial when you can lean into one or a handful of pieces of technology versus having 6 or 7. And I think that's one of the struggles that we see. So imagine having 6 or 7 different pieces technology and then having to pay attention to them all and then having to get your patients on them all. Like, what kind of experience are you creating for them there? And so again, it's really important from a sales perspective to have the patient experience defined, even though we know your patients are N of ones, though we know 80% of them may not use all of the things that you're offering. If you're super clear on what it is that you're able to deliver, it makes the sales process so much better, right? Because all of a sudden, when they say they need something, X, Y, and Z, it's like, ooh, I've got to solve for that. And as you start to elevate yourself into more of just doing the medicine, and you've got people on your team that are doing the sales, like, they get to have that experience too, so they can actually speak to it from a lived experience themselves. And so the other piece, like, that I just want to kind of like circle up on is, like, most of you are not super clear on why you're doing DPC. And you may be clear on, like, oh, I wanted to get out of the rat race of, traditional medicine. That's great. And why do you want to do DPC? Like, what's the lever beneath that and beneath that and beneath that? Because really, like, if you can find why your heart called you forward into this model, then all of a sudden you can start to enroll people into your vision. But I remember I had a call with a guy when I first started working at Hint, and I was like, why do you want to work with businesses? He's like, well, because I need like 20 people to pay my light bill. I'm like, go try and sell that to an employer, right? That's not going to work. But if you're like, hey, because I know the struggles of a small business owner, I know how hard it is to be able to give insurance to my employees, and I know how much I want to make sure that the community, the health of my community, creates a ripple effect into their families and their homes, and all of a sudden now I'm like, okay, I'm sold, I'm bought in, right? And so I really want you to think about, like, what's the why behind the why, right? And we've gotten some really great like topics from Hint Summit to talk to and teach you guys about, how do you find these answers? And so then
it drives every conversation. Like, I just feel like once anybody is passionate about what they do, it's so much easier to recommend it. Like, I almost hate the word sales, and I'm glad we call it the Art of Enrollment for a reason, because to me, it's not sales, it's educating and empowering. And once even a provider feels educated, empowered, then they get to evangelize their own stuff. That's what you're doing. Every day you're a healer, you're teaching your patients more about their body and how to listen to it and how all these things are connected. And I think as a consumer and a patient, once they're empowered and educated, they're compliant, right? Once they're compliant, then they're also retaining, because now it's, I need it every month. I need it every year. I need it all the time. It's healthcare. I'm not going to go anywhere. So you're creating this almost forecasting of patients when you are passionate about what you do, you have a story, and you're living by it every day. I mean, I hope that's why you're doing what you do. I know you're all healers, but I hope that's why you're doing what you do.
Awesome.
So, yeah. I mean, how do we get to those ideal patients? I think that's the bigger question, right?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that, like attracting your ideal patient and why have an ideal patient for those of you who maybe are just looking to work with everyone. Let's talk about that for a second.
I mean, I can tell you why you want one. Like, Lauren and I are just working with a practice now, and for the past 5 years, she's built a practice of what she thought was a group of patients. And it turns out that they were kind of using her, right? Kind of using the model a little bit. And as we went in and dug deeper into what she really wanted, we identified that those weren't her ideal patients. And so she kind of had to do some rejiggering on what that looked like for her. And if you don't know who you want to serve and you're not asking for those people to come into your life and into your practice, then it's going to feel like a job every day. It's going to feel like work and heavy lifting. And so identifying who you want to work with is kind of the benefit of this, right? It's like, this is why you guys chose the model, was to be able to not only create who you get to work with, but what your day looks like. So
yeah, and I would say, like, one of the things that we talk about a lot in the accelerator classes is just like, if you want to work with everybody, you'll end up working with nobody, right? If you had an exponential budget to use and you can attract everybody into your practice, that would be great. But most of you don't. Most of you are trying to figure out how to make this thing go with limited resources, especially financially. And so if you're starting to target particular personas, right, it allows you to really kind of like niche into a segmentation. I think Alex Hormozi's like, and I don't know if it's him, but the riches are in the niches, right? Like, and not that you can't serve people outside of that niche, but it's just so that you can get super narrow to go wide versus going wide and trying to catch everything, right?
I think there's one other aspect of that too that I love, is that oftentimes when you're getting specific and detailed, it's what you know best, and it oftentimes can reflect who you are as a person too. And those are the people that you want to attract into your life anyways. Those are the people that you want to be around. So I recently read an article by Dr. Michelle Cook. I'll drop it in the comments here in a second, in DPC News, but she talks exactly about this, and she nailed it. I was just reading and nodding along the whole time, like, this is what we talk about with every single clinic that I have the opportunity to chat with as well. So I hear that.
Yeah,
it's really important. I know Lauren does a lot of like vision worksheeting with clients, because if you don't know what you want to do and you're just grasping at it, there's no cadence there. It doesn't make sense, right? And then your website doesn't make sense. And then your service delivery model doesn't make sense. And your messaging doesn't make sense. And no wonder the person on the phone doesn't know how to sell it, because they don't really even know what's going on. If you don't have the vision in the beginning, then nothing else to me is really worth it. You got to really bake that first and then lay everything else on top of it.
Plus, it gives you an opportunity, like Claire was saying, to speak directly to them. Like, you understand their pain points, you understand why they're coming to you, right? And so, one of the things that I talked about with Andrew last month around marketing was just like, it's a real challenge to market primary care. People aren't like, hey, let me go find a new primary care doctor. They're like, hey, I have a problem with my thyroid, or I'm perimenopausal, or my kid's got a sore throat, right? So there's like little things that people are looking for you to solve their problems with. They're not like, hey, I need a new family doc. Although there are cases that happens, like people are moving to new areas or those type of things. And as Claire mentioned before, like, they're not looking at you on an insurance card anymore. So how do you actually start to build your credibility and create this know, like, trust factor that we allude to in the sales process, but that allows them to see, like, you are the expert, you are the authority. Just like Claire and I are like, hey, we can help you with sales, but marketing, I'm going to pass it over to that guy, Alex, because not my thing. Right. Yeah. And so, as you start to like really hone in on your voice and your vision and your ideal client, all of a sudden you start to like build a know, like, trust factor from people, because you're giving them this opportunity to learn and feel empowered from the tools and traits and techniques that you've put together over so many years to be able to support people in this way.
And they want that, Lauren. Like, you and I know this is something that we'll pass over marketing to teams, because it isn't our sphere of genius. And that's okay. I want you guys to also know that too. Like, it's okay that you don't have to be salespeople. You don't have to be everything to everyone. And we understand that. But there's also a level of grassroots, right? We talk a lot about how 80% of these practices grow by referrals. Okay, well, how much does it cost to acquire a brand new person versus somebody who already is within your practice? Mm-hmm. So there's a big word I'm going to use. It's not a really big word, but it's called psychographics, right? It's like the behavior of somebody versus their demographics, right? Like their age and their income and all that. We're looking at, where do they go to school? Where do they shop? Where do they hang out? Who is their physical therapist? Who is their dentist? Right? Like, you will find that those people who are already part of your practice, or if you're growing a practice and you only have 20 people, find 20 more like them. We also talk a lot about what are called movers and shakers, right? Are you the CEO of a company? Are you the HR of a company, right? Like if your patient that you already have is an industry mover and shaker, they might be able to get your foot in the door with some of those bigger companies that need a DPC model. So yeah, it really just helps to know who your people are, know where they're coming from, and get yourself out there. We've had practices that grow just by creating boot camps in their neighborhood. Like he went from 200 patients to 600 patients just because he held a monthly boot camp where it was called The Simple Things Better. And he just talked about making the simple things better. And people enjoyed it. They were part of it. He became a thought leader in the industry. He became somebody that they went to for advice and ideas. And that was, I guess you could call it like a lost leader, or you could call it like a, lead generator if you're putting a title on it. But for him, it was just education. And so I encourage you all to think about what are some grassroots marketing you can do that, especially if you're on a budget. Everybody's on a budget right now, right? So yeah, use that marketing for the big ticket stuff, and then use this as an aside.
I can use this as a quick plug too into so Accelerator coming up the first week of June. We're going to do a marketing kind of office hours. I'll be running. We're going to be talking about some of these things. So I'm excited to plug that in there. And if you're able to join, feel free to do that.
Awesome.
Great. We love marketing.
Yeah, I mean,
do our job without it. Like,
and again, like if you know who, I just want to why is that important for your ideal patient, right? It's like, I remember I was talking to a Hint client not too long ago, and she said to me, I want to attract moms, stay-at-home moms. And then she went and spent her time at Chamber of Commerce meetings.
Yeah.
Right? Is that your vision? Because you're not going to find your people there. And so a lot of times you guys, I encourage you to get really clear so that you can get like super laser focused on where you need to go. So you're not spinning your wheels trying to find people in a pond that they don't swim in. Right. Yeah. And so really think about that. And, like Claire said, our grassroots guy, I also wanted to speak to he gained 400 members in a year after the patients that he converted his practice. He thought all these folks were going to follow him. And then one of the things that he really did well in addition to the boot camp was he started showing up in his community. He was taking yoga classes. He was going to therapies. He was in salt rooms, and he published that stuff all over Facebook and tagged those businesses in there. And he started creating these synergistic relationships that allowed people to see him and as a human first, right? But also attract people that were interested in the same things that he was interested in. And so sometimes I think we go looking way out here for something that's actually right in front of our face. We just have to muster up the courage to be like, here's who I am and here's what I'm doing in the world, right? And so I like to think of the question, of when I show up, it's like, how can I serve? How can I serve this group of people today? Not sell them necessarily, but if I serve them powerfully and they get a little nugget of wisdom from me, guess who they're going to come back to when they have their next question?
Yep. I will say that came across me. I didn't want to interrupt you when you were saying it, but they call it social media for a reason. It's not Canva tile media. It's not quote media. It's social interaction. It's you being in your element, you climbing a rock, you climbing Mount Rainier, you being and living your dream, and people wanting to emulate that and be a part of that. That's why your vision is so important, because most of the time people will go out there and just create these campaigns that, like Lauren said, have nothing to do with the type of patient that they want in their practice, right? And I think it's also okay. We get away from this feeling of asking for business. And I want to empower my practitioners to feel like you are serving so much more than you know. The value of what you're offering is more than the value of your membership price or your package price. You're saving lives. You are literally almost godlike to people in a way, right? The lab coat thing is real. When they see the white coat syndrome, they are revering you and they want you to be those thought leaders. And so asking for them to join you on that is very different than saying, do you want to buy my stuff? Right? So I really I really like to also instill that in my providers is every day you recommend a lab that's necessary for a clinical reason, right? It's for you to gather information. Whether or not that lab is covered by insurance could be an out-of-pocket cost to somebody. Did you sell them that lab? Or did you just recommend the lab because you know it's clinically necessary? So I want you to get in that world of, I'm not selling my membership. I'm recommending it because I know it's clinically necessary for you to get well. And if you think through it that way, you're going to remove that fear factor of, eek, like, I don't want to ask for money. Eek, I don't know how to do that. Or, that kind of amygdala response you guys are getting. Yep.
Yeah. So if we talk about the sales process a little bit, it's like, Claire just kind of hit it on the head. It's like, it's all consultative, right? We're asking questions and letting people share their stories. And again, like in the boot camp that I did, one of the first questions I asked people is like, how do you want your patients to feel after they leave your clinic? And the majority of you, literally probably 80% of you would say, I want them to feel heard and seen when they walk outside those doors. And so why wouldn't you hold that same statement true from the sales perspective? Because again, this entire process is an art. And so how you do anything is how you do everything. And so, a lot of you have your front desk person answering the phone, trying to do scheduling and sales consultations and while some of you may not need to do the official act of enrollment and discovery calls and meet and greets and all those things, after a while, initially, it's really important that you invest time into the people that are calling.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's the same thing. It just sets the stage for how caring and how you actually take care of people. And there's a statistic that I was looking at this morning. It was like 77% of people are willing to pay more for a service if there's excellent customer service on the other side. And so again, show up doing that and give people time and attention so that they can actually feel heard and seen. And I'll tell you, when we did our secret shopping last year, rarely did we get asked, how did you hear about us? What's making you look for a new provider? And those are all really great opening questions for people to start spilling their hearts. People knock on your doors when they're in pain. They want to be heard. Give them an opportunity, right? And so instead, what happens is, hey, thanks for calling my DPC practice. Oh, you want to become a new patient? Do you know how this works? Blah, 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 blah. It's X amount of dollars a month. Not going to work for you, man.
Yeah.
Not going to work.
I was literally just about to say, please stop listing off all of your services and the price within the first 30 seconds. It is, if you do not create a relationship on the phone with the person who's calling in, why would they come to you? They're coming to you because you're different. You are a different model for a reason. And when I invest in that and I reach into my pocket and I'm paying for something, I have a totally different expectation of that customer service delivery now. It has to be elevated. And I'm not saying concierge, right? I think there's a difference here that we have to understand, that concierge and DPC have a different price tag. That doesn't mean that you don't have to not listen to your patient, right? That just means you don't maybe have to listen to them at 3 a.m. on a Friday, right? You still get to deliver great care inside the confines and the preferences of your DPC model. And so what I encourage is, if anybody here listening is either answering their own phones or having somebody else answer your phones, please just send us a quick email and we will give you that sales checklist that I hate to say everyone failed, because they did. And I've never had a doctor fail and be so upset. We got more of their egos busted by saying everybody failed that report card than I'm probably sure anything else in their whole career. But yeah, it was a big thing, because we noticed very quickly how many people are not capturing that end of the process. And so enrollment, while we're saying starts in this contemplation phase, moves into this sales and execution. It then really wraps up with onboarding, right? How can we now onboard this client effectively and efficiently by using the tech that we have and making it make sense for them. And that's really, really easy if you've got really cool tech. Hint, I feel like when this came out, I remember very vividly everybody going, thank you. Finally, we get it. I don't need to use QuickBooks or PayPal or Square, whatever I was trying to do to navigate subscriptions. It just became the light that everyone needed. And again, I encourage everyone to really look into the welcome side, like after somebody checks out and they finish enrollment, where are they going? What is that landing page sending them to? You have a specific URL you can send people to. And are they downloading a handbook, right? Like what materials are you giving them to really set them up for success after that onboarding piece? Yeah. You could probably talk more to like how Hint helps with onboarding flow, but like,
yeah, I mean, we don't have to get into that right now, though.
I would love to, like, even before that, just kind of talk about what nurturing is, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I like to think of no, N-O, as new opportunity, right? And so if somebody tells you no, which 50% of people are likely going to tell you no, right? You just, one of the things, especially if you're getting started, I encourage you to ask in a humbling way, like, I'm brand new at this. Can you tell me why this didn't work for you? Just to see if there's something like you are not catching the picture on. Like, feedback is so important. It does not mean that you're a failure. It just gives you the tools that you need to be able to further yourself forward, right? The same thing with small businesses. If you get a meeting with the guy and they're like, nope, we can't do it. Be like, hey man, can I sit in front of your employees and tell them about this DPC thing? It doesn't sound like they're getting healthcare as it is. Why not, right? How do you pivot and shift every time that you hear a no? And then just from a nurturing perspective, if I'm capturing all this information, right? I gave people time and attention. I gave them an opportunity to join us. And then I start to nurture them, whether it's through newsletters or ongoing events or, you know, sending out medical articles, whatever it is, it keeps you in the front of mind. And so when I first started doing sales back in 2007, for a hormone replacement therapy clinic that charged $30,000+ a year, it took me 6 months to close a person. 6 months. What do you think that required? A ton of follow-up, a ton of nurturing. And I know a lot of you are like, well, I don't want to be too pushy or seem like a cheesy sales car guy. And it's like, no, this is the level of care and concern you're going to get from me. Why not? Why not show them the kind of person that you are? Right? Show them the team that you have behind you that can help support and facilitate their needs. Like, again, like, how do you shift the mindset around this so that it's like, actually, I'm showing up to serve you today. It's not, I'm going to be a pain in the butt trying to sell you something. Yeah. Right? And so if we give them these different touch points, kind of like we were alluding to earlier, like through email or phone calls or text messages, depending on the systems that you're using, it just keeps them front of mind. So that way, when they call their doctor and they got to wait 3 or 4 months to get for an appointment, they're going to remember, oh my gosh, I talked to that guy. Let me see if he's available. Or, oh my gosh, I talked to that clinician. Let me see if they're available. Right. And so just because it's a no now doesn't mean that it could be a no forever, which is why it's so important to really grab the prospect's information and build a pipeline. And a pipeline essentially is taking them through the stages of the sales journey. Right. So last week or 2 weeks ago, we had office hours and I was asking people about their goals. And one of the women said, I want to close 1 employer a month. And I'm like, how many employers do you have in your pipeline right now? 0. So you want to close 6 employers before the end of the year, but you've got nobody in your pipeline that you're nurturing and educating and meeting with and all of these things, right? And so I would definitely look at how do we start to build out this pipeline so that you can tap back into these relationships that are already here for you. They're right in front of you, right?
Do you have any good tools that you recommend for that?
Yeah. So we've been working with Dr. Phil Boucher on putting together a CRM platform, and it's got all these automation pieces. It's got your pipelines. It's got our sales templates. Basically, you come in, we set you up, and you're pretty automated in terms of what you need to do. Just put a little bit of flavor on it. And so you can go to the link that's on the page there, get a demo, ask us questions, learn more. But again, we use CRMs in the background, and it's HIPAA compliant, by the way, which is awesome, all for years. And if you're not doing a CRM, you can't afford it, you're still in startup, get a spreadsheet out and start keeping track of names. You got to do it. You got to collect this is your gold, right? This is what's going to serve you at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's Perfect. Amazing. I mean, I think having the right tools just answers all the questions too. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, I'm excited to dive into that one. It's a newer tool that I'm starting to learn more about, but I hear it almost daily now that there are DPC clinics out there looking for some sort of a marketing automation or CRM tool, and I think this would be a good one, built by a DPC doc, so can't go wrong there. Before we jump off, why don't you share a little bit more about how Medicava specifically can help out DPC clinics that are looking to grow?
Yeah. I mean, Claire and I have been working together for like over a decade now, and we do conversion. So traditional fee for service into direct care and concierge medicine. But really, one of the things that we noticed early on was people don't have a salesperson in their office. And so one of the services that we offer is to be able to answer and close your patients, right? So we found a problem, but there's the solve for it. And that way, those 62% of phone calls that aren't getting answered are getting reduced because there's somebody actually there that's available to talk to your folks. We also realize like we're really good at fishing in a pond, and we want to teach you guys how to do the same thing. So we've got through this CRM, we've got a little mini sales school that will teach you how to work your leads, make them happen, convert them, get educational materials out. And then, of course, you can always just use the tool itself. If you're like, hey, I've got my thing set up, how do I do this? And then there's some training and resources that will help you really get strong in the sales side of things. And then everything gets pushed into Hint. And so we're excited because ultimately a lot of our sales process always ends up there. I mean, I know for those of you who have been watching our accelerator lessons, like I put together a whole onboarding journey. I think the biggest challenge many clinicians have is like, oh my God, they just paid me money and now what? Now what, right? And so we teach you how to do like build things and create the automations through Hint. So that way when they go in, they sign up, they already get a welcome video for you, they get their downloaded handbook, and then everything goes into your clinical EMR if you're using Hint Clinical as well. And so it's like, how do we get more of those tech things to leverage time so that you can actually be present for the people in the room or on the phone or that are in front of you every single day?
Yeah. And I'll just finish really quickly with the biggest part and the best part that our practitioners enjoy is the live coaching, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're at Hint Summit, which all of you will be there, come up to our booth, get some live coaching. Like, I want you guys to talk to us. I want you to get hot tips. Like, what wording can I use? How can I close this better? Do some role playing. Like, that's the biggest part is you guys are already see one, teach one, do one anyway. And that's the mentality that I want you to bring into your Art of Enrollment because it really will elevate you. So.
Oh, and Lauren's actually speaking. Yeah, Lauren's actually speaking at Hint Summit this year on the topic of building local communities around direct primary care. So that's gonna be really exciting as well. Looking forward to that.
And then you can
email. We have a question from Kevin.
Yeah, you can email info at Medicava medicava.com, and we will send you over a checklist.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining today. Like I said, if you're wanting to share this with anyone, you can find it on our socials as well as in the community and on YouTube. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Bye.